I'm talking with Paul, who just explained that I've only learned to now refer to him as Hades, and that's because there was this name that. See, Paul, this is the part where I said I'm gonna make you retell the story because I
That's fine.
didn't have it recorded, and I always feel terrible when I'm like, wait, that's gold. I need that. Hold on. So just really quickly again, it started rather innocently, right?
Yeah, it was just like a misspelling of my surname, and so obviously I'm down as normally my official writer's name and all that is like P.A. Hayden, and it's if I'm on books it's P.A. Hayden because then I can like handlebar my mustache and feel fancy.
Very nice.
Um, but and someone had put Hayden's the end kind of wasn't present. Me and Laurie laughed about it, kind of thing. Laurie Cunningham, who was on your show previously, and
Yeah.
then within 20 minutes of that conversation, she had found a GIF of Hades from the Disney's Hercules, changed the spelling underneath to match mine, and it just said Hades gonna Hade, and then just put from this day forth he shall be known as Hades or Lord Hades, and Hades just stuck, and I've been called worse things. So
Right. Yeah, I understand. If you get a name where you're like, that's not so bad. I've had worse. That's really good. It's
exactly.
nice. I Were you aware of Lori's naming powers up to this point? Because clearly that's a gift when you can just declare that someone will be called that, and apparently everyone agreed. They just
She
sort of
she's got
went
a,
with
she's
it.
got a good following on Twitter. It didn't work in my. I mean, luckily it was something quite a nice name. It could have been worse, as I say, and I think that they still would have called it me. But yeah, it was good and it stuck and it was a good laugh. And then on my one birthday, one of our artists drew a version of me as the Disney's Hercules Hades.
Right.
So the flamed hair, but also my beard, and
Yes.
rather bulbous nose. Um, and I was like, do you know what? I bloody love that. So now that has actually become my profile picture. It's on my phone and everything. Fully embraced it now. So I'm like, this is fine.
Yeah, at some point I would be tempted to be like, yeah, so how big of a commission can I get from you of this? Like, we talking poster size? Can I have it
Yeah,
life size so people walk into the room and they're like, that's, I mean,
yeah, just
let me know how
Hades
it turns
massive.
out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah, everybody who wants to wear the Guy Fawkes and whatever. No, 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 no. We got a Hades for you. We're gonna make it really interesting. It's gonna be a new new thing out there. You'll see it in clubs. Just keep your eyes open. You'll know all
Yeah.
about it. Now, I'm glad you brought up Lori a minute ago because she's the one
Mm.
who introduced me to you. She
Yeah.
she describes her writing process, one in which someone says, "Hey, you should write this," and she goes, "No," and then they say, "No,
Right.
no, you should write this," and she's like, "No."
Yeah.
And then eventually something happens and she ends up writing it. And from what I've seen, amazing things happen when the writing starts and then
Yeah.
when the finished product is revealed. How can you? I've heard her side of the story. It's
Hmm.
always interesting to get an idea of your context and then we can let the people decide. So, can you tell me how it is that you met Lori and what that process of like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm doing this thing and trying to explain this thing and come check this out and what transpired from there?
So we met on Twitter, just through a shared love of sense of humor. We've got a very similar sense of humor, and we realised that quite early on. And I think it just started with like exchanging of gifs slash gifs, however you want to say it. We just comment on each other's posts and stuff, and then within a short period of time, we just started chatting. Our friendship is extremely organic, like we got on from day one. I joke and refer to her as just a massive pain in the backside because she is, but I still love her to bits. And I was talking about my love of obviously being a comic book fan and wanting to be a comic book writer. And to start off with, she was just kind of she's been a good friend. She's kind of cheering me on and saying, yeah, this is great, and I'm running stuff past her. She was doing some like beta reading for me and things like that. And then when I came up with the idea for this like event, for this catalyst, for the world that is now like our main, like our world that we've created, the main thing,
Mhm.
I knew I wanted to write something in prose as well as do the comics. And I just thought, there's no one who I've spoken to more about this. There's no one who I kind of want to, there's no one else in the world I kind of want to do this with. So I approached her on it and said, look, do you want to write this book with me? In true Laurie form, she's like, no, yes. Because that's what she does. That's 90% of our conversations. Do you want to? No, but also yes. So I suggested doing the book together, and it's 16 stories. So it's points of villainy, points of virtue. And I had this idea where I wanted half the book to be printed upside down, so you can literally finish reading points of villainy, right. You flip it over, and then you've got virtue. And I explained the world to her and so on and so forth. And as far as it was at that point, she was just going to help me write the book, and that was it. And then obviously she wrote a story in there that I saw a main character in, which then has now gone on to become Sister Grimm. So yeah, so I then had to try and sweet talk her into getting into comics. And then, but one of the things that I love about our relationship and our friendship is that, so when we were doing the book, a lot of people, you have that moving timeline or deadline because you're indie and you've got to, you've got to have that self-discipline sometimes, but life gets in the way, life happens, so it rolls. Mm-hmm. And I decided one day this is rolled enough. So I sent her a message. I believe it said, I've done what I've done. So there we are. And what I'd actually done was tweeted out, the book will be launched in November. And this was... she called me some names. She used a lot of caps lock. There was a lot of caps lock. She was like, oh, you're out of your mind. Probably. But we've got to now.
Right. We've told people it's happening.
Yeah. So we worked hard, and then the book came out on the 30th of November. So it was still November, but it was skin of the teeth gone. But we made it, and from that point on, I was like, that's how we're going to do things.
I like it. Yeah. Hey, quick thing. I'm picking up some background noise, and I don't know if there's...
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. And I was like, are we just getting some sort of weird internet sound traffic? But thanks.
It could just be that, yeah.
Gotcha. So a couple of things throw me really quickly, because, I mean, in your experience, have you known of a comic writing relationship that begins with a Twitter chat and conversations that build from that point? It sounds like a fun way, and I've had a couple of weird things. I mean, my conversation with Lori that led to us chatting was started with a couple of Twitter comments, and her at some point saying, well, if you're looking for guests, and I'm like, well, that's hilarious. Well, if you're just going to tease me like that, fine, let's go ahead and make this happen. And and it happened like that. And I've had others where it's like, hey, it's great, let's get in touch, and you send out a message and time goes by, and most of the time you just sort of smile and go, okay, it was a great moment that could have happened, but when it actually happens, it feels like it's something a little bit different. I don't know how else to put it. So, were you surprised by this, or were you just, as you said, sort of like, hey, we kicked this thing and it's rolling, let's keep kicking it and keeping it rolling?
Yeah, I mean, the one of the things that with our friendship is we became huge supporters of each other immediately. It was, if she got an idea, if she got something, I'm 100% there. When she brought out her own book with Babies with Rabies, I was 100% there for the whole thing. Yeah, Gene, one of those ideas I wish I'd have thought of. It was one of them. I was like, oh, love it. But 100% there, and it was the same with ASAP from the beginning. From the time that I turned around and said, I think I'm going to start my own company. What do you think? And then she was just, she said, if anyone's going to do it, because she knows me very well. She knows I'm stubborn. She knows that I won't. I'm relentless. And that's not a cocky comment at all. It's just, if someone tells me no, I immediately say I'm doing it then. Or if someone tells me it's not going to happen, I will try and figure out how to make it happen. It's like I'm doing it. So she said, if anyone's going to do it, she said, if anyone's stubborn enough, to you. So I was like, oh,
It's a good compliment.
it is. It's a great compliment. So we started doing that, and then organically, with the book, and then, as I say, with the talk of Sister Grimm, and then Nem DW or Dave Howard joined us, and we got an editor on board as well, and the original artist for Messiah Kyle, and we kind of got this wicked little unit. And how it's grown since then is just baffled me. It's gone. It's been brilliant, and again, the way it started, because I started the company through like a government program here.
Okay.
At the time, there was a thing about small businesses. You can start a small business, and we'll assist. Okay, and it wasn't much. It wasn't a big thing. It wasn't. They're not going to throw thousands and thousands of pounds or dollars at you. But it was enough for me to say, okay, I can set up my website. I can use this, and I can set up my website, and I can start. And then kind of what happened was surreal, because I then became this weird like poster child. So a lot of businesses,
program.
Yeah. So because a lot of businesses that were going to do it were like mobile hairdressers, painter and decorators, those kind of businesses. And then this dipstick comes along and kind of goes, comics.
Look what I'm doing.
Yeah. And then, so what happened was surreal. I then get a phone call from the head office of this branch of the government, and then I speak to them, and they officially interviewed me, and then a newspaper contacted me, and then they interviewed me, and then another section. So this guy who rings me, he's from the film and media section of this section of the government. And long story short, they made up like a mini documentary about it, and animated me. So I had like a little cartoon. It was surreal. And the instruction to the artist was make me look better than this. Thank you, that would be appreciated. Which they did. Yeah, and it was great. It was surreal. But it was very, very cool the way it all kind of panned out. And,
right.
And it was it was one of those moments where so many organic things happened, so many things just kind of came about. I'm just extremely lucky with the way it's gone. Extremely lucky.
And out of curiosity, when it comes to this idea, I love the concept of an event and sort of the things that spiral out of it. And I've seen it done well. Back in the 90s, I was a huge fan of the Milestone line that came out from DC Comics. And the whole concept behind Milestone was there's this city called Dakota, and this thing happens. There's, some sort of gas or something, and suddenly everyone reacts differently, and an entire city changes. For me, that was a fun concept. And along the way, I've looked for that. It's almost like, buying a car, and then afterwards you see that car on the road everywhere. It was like after I was exposed to that event, I looked for those moments as well. And I've seen it happen in so many fun universes and different iterations. Everyone takes that idea and then turns it and says, okay, let's take that concept and then let's do this with it. And your approach is really interesting. I've really enjoyed the description of how when Lori was setting it up, it's like you have this event and then you have these groups around it. You have one that's sort of like a government type thing. You have one where you have Sister Grimm, where you have this woman who's now, experiencing something on the supernatural side. Then you come over here and you have, the different idea with Messiah or Dead of Night, where these characters have all been affected very specifically, very, very much unique to who they are and to however they interacted with this experience. And then it's their story of understanding it from how they begin with it to then how they, I guess, go to a certain point of understanding or choose to sort of follow whatever it is they've been given to whatever purpose they assign to it or believe they have from it. So for for you, this starts out, you introduce it to Lori, but when it came to you, where did it start from? Is it one of those things where you're, witnessing something, you go, what? And then suddenly the wheels start turning, or, was it?
I think it was like an accumulation of things. As a fan, and you're growing up and a fan of comic books, I've been a fan of comic books since I was 8, and I'm nearly 43. And, all of these little characters and little tidbits that you find over the years and that you create, you can then start to go, do you know what, I'm going to take that from there, I'm going to take that from there, and then other characters evolve. Like Messiah just came from one doodle. It's literally, the whole concept for that whole thing came from a doodle of a guy covered in bandages, and and I think, some things naturally evolve. Some things you go, what was I thinking? No, that thing. But I think with the event, what I wanted, the thing about that is it signifies the changing of the guard. So pre-event, which we haven't covered yet, but we intend to, but pre-event is your very costumed superheroes, underpants on the outside and a cloak, and very what you would imagine when you think superhero comic books, secret identities, and the like. And then the event happened, but what I wanted was something that's written from the lay person's perspective. So each story is just from a different individual's perspective. You might see a hero in it, but nothing is from their point of view. Everything, and that's the beauty of it. Points of villainy, points of virtue, point of view.
Right.
You say that everything is from this ground level perspective. So you get to see it through the eyes of just all these normal people and what it does to the world rather than what it does to the heroes. So, and then after that, this new breed of heroes kind of start to appear, and we've actually got a timeline on our website that tells you basically the best order. If you're going to read it in order, this is the order you want to be reading it. You can come in at any vantage point, but you can read it in this is the timeline.
If you're one of those people who needs to know when it begins and start at that beginning, it's available to you. We can tell you exactly where to jump in at and how to get that. So this idea all comes from a doodle, which is really fun for me because doodling is one of those things that can happen just about anywhere. I love it when my wife did some art school, and sometimes I'll see her waiting on the phone, talking to customer service or setting something up, and she's on hold and she'll have something and she'll be making notes. And then suddenly I'll look down and she'll have drawn a border around it, and there will be flowers and birds and maybe some, and I just sort of chuckle wow, I don't have that artistic ability, but I love the idea of someone who can just doodle in that way and sort of just entertain or, explore while doing something rather mundane. Was it similar for you? Were you okay, someone's about to talk about something really boring and I have to be here, but it doesn't mean I can't be doing this? Or was it something where you're I'm going to sit down and just see what comes out of the brain and put it on paper?
I think I'm a natural fidget, which you'll see is I'm always playing with my beard, or, I'm a natural fidget and I can't sit still. I'm a natural fidget and an insomniac. So it means that I'm constantly on the move, which bodes well when you're running your own business because I'm always doing something. But when you're just, if you're trying to work a 9 to 5 and you're trying to concentrate on a spreadsheet and your brain's going off in one, kind of, do you know what would be great? This, la 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 la. So,
yes,
that's the way that my brain is wired. That's the way it works. So I think a lot of it, was just some of the characters. I think younger me really wanted a Batman-esque type character and stuff like that. And I was a big fan of Nightwing and things like that. So I think influence came into some of the pictures, but the doodle that was for the Messiah was just a doodle. It was just a doodle. And then when I saw that it was, it looked like something, that's when I grabbed a red pen and started to just add a bit of I was like, and I actually put that on our Instagram. And I've got a picture of it, and it's an awful picture. It's not the best picture. I'm not an amazing artist. I draw really big eyes. So there's a future for me in manga, but it was just, it's huge eyes, small mouth, and
very emotional.
yeah, like an emotional goldfish. And then I, but it became all of this, and it's crazy now to think that we've gone, like I say, from Messiah, points of villainy, points of virtue, and then in May of last year we were doing, or have continued to do, one a month, an issue or a title a month.
Right.
So
This
it's
is a great
massive.
opportunity to maybe tell people a little about who these characters are that we've kind of been talking around. We've described the event, and you've mentioned a couple of key things. One, there's a changing of the guard. Two, we are introduced to a new guard. This event has triggered something in which you've got these new characters. And since you've already brought the Messiah up through a doodle, why not continue with that vein, and then we can move on to the others. So once you create this character, what's the story of Messiah? And you can go into any evolution you want, or you can just stick with, okay, let's just talk about what I've got, because the evolution could be, much more convoluted and involved. But tell us about Messiah.
So the title being Messiah is less about the name of the character, and it's more about the project. So it's like when you think like Weapon X, even though he was called Weapon X, it was the name of the project. And it's the same with this character. So his name's actually just Daniel. It's he's not called Messiah. And what I wanted was to find, when you think of characters, I've always been a bit jaded when it comes to overpowered characters, because it's like, well, where's their weakness? Where are they ever going to have a problem?
Right.
And what I wanted was a guy with a really flawed ability. And the idea is that this guy is experimented on, and he's given these healing abilities, and what he's able to do is absorb injuries from others. So if you've been shot, let's say, he can absorb it, but the problem is he can't heal himself. So it's that idea that I can't help you because I'll die. I'm really sorry. So that's why he's covered in bandages, because he's covered in cuts and bruises, because he can't heal himself, but he can take it from others. And I just like this idea that this guy is so conflicted. Like, someone save me. I can't. Like, and it's that idea, it's self-preservation or doing the right thing.
Right.
And
heroes, so often the idea is sacrifice, right? That's like the one big thing. If they have this gift, what defines them is how they use it. Most often it's in like a sacrificial way, but this confliction of I could maybe save somebody's life, but then I die and I can't save anybody else afterwards. Like, that's it. Like, you're the
exactly. Yeah. And because he's a failed experiment, because he should be able to heal himself, he's kind of thrown in with all the other rejects. So there's all these different experiments that are happening with this kind of sinister organization called Level 8. And they're given an opportunity to escape. So they do. And he wants, they're ready to just follow him everywhere, and he doesn't want anything to do with it. He's like, I want my old life back, leave me alone, get away from me. So and then in the first issue, these two guys called Mr. Button and Mr. Button, so they're the Buttonmen. So they're tasked with bringing him back, and they're these two, because it all takes place in the UK. So they're these two London gangsters. Think of like a Guy Ritchie film, Lock, Stock, and and maybe like
there's not someone named Fats, is there?
No, but think along the lines of the craze. There's an older Mr. Button and a younger Mr. Button, and they're brothers. And they even refer to each other as Mr. Button, which is, I just liked that idea. And obviously the Button Man comes from the Godfather. You send in the Button Man. So he's being chased by these, but also at the same time, there's this character called Foe. And we mentioned masks earlier, but this actually was a thing that we did with. So Foe is a character who escaped with Daniel, and he is always wearing this kind of like metal plated mask. You see, his clothing changes, but he's always got the mask on. It's like very V for Vendetta. He never takes the mask off.
Right.
I joke, but I say what I essentially wanted was the cheapest cosplay you could possibly get, which is just a mask. Right. So with that in mind, what we did was we created a free download. So you can download a version of the mask. So you just print it out, cut it out, put it on, and then it's hashtag friend of foe. And then And then so we did this last year, and I was so surprised at the response. And Foe has now become like a fan favorite.
I can only imagine. I mean, anytime you get to download a mask and become a character, you know, and just basically cut it out. That was one of my favorite things when they'd have that on the cereal box or something. And you cut it out of the magazine, and you're like, oh yeah, I am. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I loved it, and I just like the idea, and it's like participation, and people want to be involved, and so we did that, and then loads of people did something. We had our own online con last August, and people did fan art, and the majority of fan art was Foe. Most people like
everybody's doing their best Foe.
And yeah, but he's definitely become like a fan favorite, and it's that has now affected how I'm writing him as well, because I was like, okay, more Foe,
right.
Definitely more
give
Foe.
The people what they want.
Yeah.
You've done a natural segue for me without me even needing to bring up who the next character to talk about. So let's move into Foe. You've mentioned Foe is part of this group of rejects who leaves with Daniel, and clearly has something going on in which the mask is always present. Yes. And what more can you tell us about Foe that people might be into, where they're like, wow, I want this character's mask now because I know what kind of a character they are, and this is something that really interests me. Who's Foe?
So Foe is self-named, so he never reveals his true identity, and he's from the Forces of Energy project. So they're experimented on, and then as he's being wheeled out, he just sees the F.O.E for Forces of Energy, and just decides, that's it, I'm Foe, and this is my name, and I will not take off this mask. And they're like the foot soldiers of this organization, or will become the foot soldiers, and he's just flawed. You know, they're like, he's not quick enough, he's not fast enough, he's not strong enough. But what he has is an ability for like kinetic absorption. So even if he's shot, it won't actually affect him in the same way. He's able to absorb that energy. He can't really redirect it, but he's still fast, he's still strong, he's still brilliant. And you know, he's very kind of protective over Daniel. But he's also, I wanted him to have this little sense of comedy to him. So there's a scene in the second issue which doesn't give anything away, but two of the characters are trying to, you know, see if they could sedate Daniel, and like, you know, we need to calm him down. And then straight into panel comes Foe's fist. And he just knocks Daniel out. And then the other one character just goes, thank you. And he's just like, you're welcome. And just walks off. You know, like, you wanted it done, I've done it, you know.
Right.
You know,
you got a problem, I got a solution.
Yeah. But he's like the main kind of protector. And as we go forward, you'll see more of the group. But at the same time as the button men who were chasing them, there's also the Sisters of Bridget. So these characters are based off a thing from my heritage. So I'm from an Irish family, and Bridget is part of our folklore and things like that. She's known as the triple goddess and all this. She's like a three-faced kind of deity. And I took that and tweaked it. And pre-event, the sisters are three women who were chosen by the earth to be kind of protectors, if you will. And each one of them has a power based off the actual real deity, because in like I say, in our folklore, there's the sister of the hearth, the sister of inspiration, and the sister of the forge. So hearth means to heal. Inspiration, obviously, we know what that means. And then the forge is fire. So each one of these sisters has those abilities. So obviously the one sister is similar to Daniel, you see, so she has this power. The other sister can inspire you to change your mind with her words. So once she locks eyes with you, she can inspire you to do something good, but also stop something bad and all that kind of thing. So she sways you. And the third sister is just fiery. She's got heat absorption, she flames. No, very cliche, but brilliant. And they're not genuine sisters, if you like. They're just three women, random women. chosen by the earth, and they're based off 3 women that I've actually met in my real life. You see, it's
Wonderful.
like, yeah, but what they have is a special ability that when the 3 of them are together, think like kind of like Captain Planet, but the 3 of them together can merge together and become Brigid. So they become one being known as the Triple Goddess. So they form into one. So when I write with Bridget, when Bridget speaks, it's in 3 speech bubbles because you have the 3 voices. But during the event, Bridget is knocked down, the 3 of them are separated, and one of them is separated from the other 2. So Bridget at the moment can't come back until they find the 3rd. And because Daniel has similar powers to her, they're kind of going, we've got to get him. So he's being hunted by level 8 and the Button Men, and then he's being hunted by the 2 of the sisters of Bridget as well.
So it reminds me of this. Reminds me, I was checking my bookshelf because it reminded me of the writer's name. It reminds me of a little bit, at least when it comes to Bridget, of also like if you've read Robert Graves and The White Goddess.
I think I have that.
Oh yeah, he does one of those Joseph Campbell-esque kind of things where he basically takes the idea of the triple goddess and sort of follows from one of the earliest language stories. It's a fun story in that it starts out where there's 2 groups that are about to go to war, and the wise people get together, and it turns out the one group of wise people is like, hi, we're about to tell you a poem. And in the process of telling them the poem, they reveal that they know the secret name of the other group's god. And without throwing a single conflict, the other side just takes over because they're like, that's it. We know your god. We've won. And it follows the story of this constant transition of the idea of the Hercules, Moses, sort of process of, this character who becomes a king and is sacrificed, and then a new king gets picked. But it also follows this idea of it's all in relationship to the triple goddess and the many iterations that occur in the many different ways she appears through every form of religious belief that addresses her, that's built with that connection. I think it's from like the 40s, but it's very dense, and for me it's just kind of fun because it always unlocks some part of history that I'm like, oh, interesting. And what I like about that is that for me it seems as though one of the things they always point to with those stories is that they're very cyclical in regards to either season or other patterns that have to occur. Just like there is the rising of the hero and the crowning of the king, there is eventually the sacrifice of the king, the death, the rebirth. And the same thing also occurs for the goddess in many ways. So this idea of Bridget showing up makes me wonder, is there potentially, and you can tell me I'm teasing things for you, or there's stuff you can't really get into, but potentially Bridget is these 3 women brought together, not just because, hey, it seemed like a good Tuesday and we thought we'd do this, but more generally for a purpose. Either it's about the event, either it's a before or after the event, either they were trying to stop it, or it's now the event has occurred and they're there, or maybe they're always just sort of chosen throughout each generation, and this is their iteration as we're seeing them in the present.
It's definitely more the latter, I think.
Okay.
It's like I'm a big fan of The Authority when they were done through WildStorm.
Oh yes.
One of my favorite things of all time.
I totally agree. I love seeing superheroes do things that they know they should do and really change the world. Get in trouble for it, mind you, but change the world and kind of be very cocky about it in the process.
I think they're great. And the one character from get-go, I mean, obviously I love Midnighter, it was my absolute favorite, but one of the characters that I really enjoyed was Jenny Sparks. And that she was the spirit of the 20th century and all that kind of stuff. And it was very exactly. And then you got Jenny Quantum, but it was very similar to that. And I liked the idea that they were chosen by the earth. They always become the same goddess. That's the thing. When she exists, she exists with all the knowledge and everything. But it's 3 people, or 3 women, more importantly, make her who she is every time. So she'll have changes of character, but mainly she's exactly the same goddess. But when I had come up with the idea, because I love folklores and fables, and come from an Irish family, there's such a wealth of things that you can look at, so many great things. And I just thought, when I came up with the idea, instantly one of my friends, Cherie, popped into my head as the one for inspiration. And I even messaged Cherie and said, look, I've got this character. I want to model her off you. And the first thing Cherie said was just make her look fabulous, darling. That was her words. Make her look fabulous. And I was like, I will. She'll look like you, and it's fine. So, but I had this permission to kind of use her, but it was great, and I like the idea that you've got these remnants of some of the heroes from before as well, and how the event changed then, because Messiah takes place a year after the event. So for a year, people have gone, "Where's Bridget? She's gone."
Interesting. Okay,
You see,
that's
so
interesting. I like that detail. Okay.
yeah. So two of the women have kind of almost given up, but they also go, "We know she's still alive because otherwise the Earth would have chosen someone else.
Right.
So where is
Right.
she? You know."
It's funny, but it reminds me of that. I don't know if you saw the Kevin Smith Dogma film that came out
Oh
years
yeah,
ago,
yeah, it's a
and
great
that
film.
great concept. If God for some reason is in this human body and dies, he resets, and it's no problem. However, there's this limbo stasis that can happen if there's an injury that causes them to be comatose, say, and then the consciousness is there but the body hasn't ceased, so they're sort of trapped. This concept of things would have happened normally, but something happened that interrupted what would have been a natural process. So
Yeah.
now they're trying to solve what's going on here. How is it that she hasn't been replaced, she's still out there, but we can't find her, which is a lovely mystery.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's the thing that I kind of want to really play with. So there's all these different nuggets within that story, and as I say, that's the one we launch with. And then so obviously, as you know, Laurie has written Sister Grimm. Um, Dave has written OPSEC. Obviously, I will let Dave come on your show and I will let him explain that fully to you, because he's a fantastic writer, fantastic, and just a great guy as well. Such a good friend of mine. So I'll let him explain that. But
No
in
problem.
terms of the other ones as well. So obviously, Dead of Night that I wrote was the idea of a fallen hero. So what I had was, pre-event. This guy is known as Sir Robert Ward, and he is kind of like, in my head, like an amalgamation of Captain America meets the Phantom. So the Phantom had
Okay.
got like this lineage of father to son, of
Right.
taking over, and then Captain America was the face of the country. So what I wanted to do was kind of merge those two together and create a character pre-event that was very like smiley for the cameras. And he never wore a mask, and his identity wasn't, hidden. But every member going all the way back to medieval times has been the kind of the knight of the Isle, the guardian of the Isles kind of thing. So his father was before him, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So pre-event, he's a very kind of smile for the camera, wink dude. They have a award exhibition and all this stuff, and his family is celebrated and so on. And he's the leader of this team again pre-event. But then what happens during the event? It's the first time he truly fails, and he's driven insane, and he's completely lost the plot. And in Dead of Night, he destroys his own family's exhibit, and he basically uses all these bits of different armor from all his ancestors, and puts it together, and just becomes this mad kind of medieval giving, kind of as form of justice, kind of vigilante, and just goes around and starts killing people. Just loses the plot. And
is he driven by something? Because failure is so often, it highlights something, whatever that flaw might have been.
Mm.
Arrogance, a feeling of, oh, you know what, I was too soft. Next time I'll be harder. Or this idea of basically righting a wrong. That when you fail, you've exposed some weakness or perceived weakness, and sometimes the flawed response can be, well, this is how I have to solve it. And readers are going, wait a minute, no, that's actually the wrong, you're going about this wrong. However, the
What are you
character
doing?
has to, like, right, and the character has to
Yeah.
go through that process of understanding. They either get it and they change, or they get it and they go, whatever, this is what works for me. I'm not stopping until I'm done, kind of an idea. What's the motivation for this character's failure? Because I think that's a fun idea that they fail, but what causes them to get back up and go, I'm gonna do this, which is piece together these pieces of armor and go out in a very vengeful way. Is it like a misaligned sense of justice? Is it revenge?
Yeah, I think it's that idea that it's the pressure of the
Hmm.
lineage on your shoulders. You're the one holding the hundreds of years on your shoulders now. But also on top of that is if you fail at something when you think that you go, well, I've been good. Like, what the hell? I've been good. I did what I was supposed to do, but you fail. Then what you perceive as what you were supposed to do isn't what you now think you should be doing.
Right.
So
Okay.
he goes from being, I've been nice, I've smiled for the cameras, I brought people in, fine. If that didn't work, and there's a scene in the first issue where there's like a statue of him,
Mm.
and he just destroys it, and he just goes to town on it, and he takes a proper medieval mace and just destroys it, and that's the significant, like, that's it, that's a significant moment for him. That guy's gone.
Right.
And then he puts on this, and it's a proper, like, suit of armor, think jousting kind of, the plate goes down, and this is this new guy now, and he's bigger, he's beefier, he's stronger, but he's relentless now. No more niceness. It's gone.
And he sounds like a bit, or maybe not a bit, maybe completely like an executioner, like to a
Yeah.
degree, this is how I'm going to do things now. And I like that idea of doing it. It reminds me of so many great, I'm reminded of immediately of George Carlin, the comedian,
Mm.
who got his, he basically made a name for himself as being squeaky clean, suit and tie, won all sorts of Emmys for his comedy. And then at some point meets the counterculture and goes, yeah, actually, I have some questions about the establishment, and then goes on to have a whole second life where he basically, mocks everything about that guy he used to be, and becomes
Hmm.
this guy who's so irreverent to a degree that he's loved even more so. And it's an interesting sort of transition, like what
Mm.
causes it, and then what is the character you become? Could possibly through this vengeance, Dead of Night become a greater influence on the world than prior to the event, right? And
Yeah, and it's so many people's perspectives have changed on what a hero is and what because if the heroes failed, then they didn't save us. So what's the point of them now? You
right,
know, so the public has changed,
yeah.
and he's he's just vengeful now, and but there's I still want that slither of kind of hope in there with him. But sometimes when I write, I refer to it, especially if I'm typing, I refer to it as let my fingers do the walking, and what comes out comes out.
Mm,
So sometimes I have a basic idea of where I want to go. Like,
right.
I think I want to get let's go from A to Z, but I'm not going to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm going to go like A, H, Q, apostrophe, 4.4401001.
Right.
So sometimes I enjoy not knowing until I've got there. So I don't know where he's going to go yet, and that's the beauty. I know. I've got, as with all our titles, we've got the intention of the 4-issue arcs
Hmm.
uh, to establish the characters, and then after the 4-issue arcs, that's when we're going to start crossing them over and seeing
Okay.
more of them in each other's titles.
That sounds a little bit, I think Lori teased a little bit of that when we were
Mhm.
chatting, this idea of like what you guys were building to. And it, I mean, I like the idea of when the crossovers start to happen because you discover things. I'm always amazed when writers start talking about like, hey, we never put these two together, so we're going to start putting these people together and then see what happens, because
Oh yeah,
that's the fun, right? Like, how do these two characters get along? Do they get along? Does it get weird? Does it get
and I love that idea as well. I'm the same as you. I love Easter eggs. One of the things that I know Nem did in OPSEC issue 1, and it's a tiny moment, but I was like, good man, thank you, is these government agents are on their way to this incident, and they're in this van, and on the radio, the people on the radio were talking about the conjector, like, who is the conjector, which is, as you know, our YouTube character, if you will.
Right.
You know, so I know Laurie mentioned him in the pod with you, and again, it's just, we start crossing these little moments over, so we tease things in as we move. You know,
and it's got to be a bit of fun knowing, kind of like, put this here because it's going to come up later. Just put this here, and it reminds me of those great movies that I loved when they would do time traveling and they would go back in time and set up all the things they would need for later on. That feeling of like, yeah, we're just going to set this all up, and then when we need it, we're just going to reach over and grab that thing, and you're ready to go.
I love it. Yeah,
now,
Dave, I think it's great.
I'm curious also for some fun comparison, because when I was talking with Lori about, getting into writing, as she pointed out, her MO is no, maybe, oh, fine, finally, yes. And then it's great. But that prior to getting into writing, she really hadn't been one of those people, as she described it, who was like writing books at 5 and like stapling together pages and going, look, this is my book. It was more something that gradually occurred. Everybody gets into writing. Everybody gets into their art, their craft, the thing that I'm talking with them about when we're talking about it. For whatever reasons they do. It can be a short journey. It can be a very long one. So this is the part where we get to sort of rewind a little bit and go, okay, but up until this moment, who were you leading up to this? Were you always building to this? Is this something of a culmination? Have there been a few things? I mean, essentially, what got you here? Because you mentioned this great government project, but had you been pursuing writing stories, comics, characters in other ways prior to? Had it been a part of your life in any way?
I've always enjoyed being creative. I've always enjoyed it. So previously to this, about 10 years ago now, I had written a book of poetry, but it wasn't on a summer's day thou hast done it. It wasn't that kind of poetry.
This wasn't Whitman and Leaves of Grass, or
no, it was it's Irish limericky mockery poetry, and the book was called My Little Book of Big Bugbears, Nursery Rhymes for Grumpy Grown-Ups. And
lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, and I like being playful, and I like having a laugh, and so I had done all of these kind of poems and just about really random things. But it's like, there was one poem about why I think goldfish is a pointless pet. My distaste for 90s boy band hand gestures and all that kind of,
Nice.
People who chew with their mouth open. It was just a random book of those things. And then off the back of that, I ended up, I know, it's surreal how I ended up doing, but I ended up doing stand-up comedy for nearly 3 years. I did stand-up for nearly 3 years.
Wow.
And yeah, it was good. It was a lot of fun.
Okay.
It was surreal. And my proudest moment of doing stand-up comedy was I did a charity event for KK Downing from Judas Priest.
Oh, wow. Hey.
Yeah.
That's a fun little, like, hey, this is a little notation on the resume. Just a moment for you to check out on the CV.
It was cool. It was
How did you like stumble into that, walk into that, announce yourself, with authority and say, I will do your event. I'm the guy you need. How did that occur?
Well, again, it was when I started doing stand-up. I actually, someone had said they were doing these classes to make stand-up part of this art festival they want, and I was like, oh, cool, And I knew the guy who was running it. A friend of mine is incredibly funny, and I said to him, dude, you really should do this. So he was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I said, well, I'll tell you what. I'll come with you for moral support. He was like, I'm nervous, so, you know. And they just want you to do these workshops. So I was like, I'll come with you. Any excuse to go and get a pint of Guinness from the pub, I'll be there. So it was 20 minutes before the first meeting. I'd already said to my buddy who was running things that we'll be there. And then my friend backed out. It's like, I'm not doing it. I can't. I'm too scared. I'm not doing it. I called him some things, and I was like,
there was some caps lock involved, yeah.
there were some so many exclamation marks, and I thought, well, I can't. I've said we're going, and I'm a man of my word. So if it can't be we, it can at least be me. So I'll just go and go. And it wasn't far anyway. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go down. And so I went down, and there were some other people there who were going to try their hand at it, and I wasn't going to try my hand at it. It was just I was there just for for support and some Guinness. And then someone said, just give it a go. And there was this moment where there were loads of people in this room. There's a microphone on a stage, and they were like, "Does anyone want to have a go?" And you have that moment where everyone's looking at everyone else. Okay. And then finally, my friend Nikki was just like, "Just do it." And I went, "What?" And she went, "Just do it." And then she just shouted out. She just went, "He wants to," and just like a hand over my head. And then
good friend to have.
Yeah. And then the guy was like, "Did you come here to try this?" And I went, "No, but I'll do it." And I just got up and thought, I'll have a go. I'll have a go and see what happens. And I just told a story of some random encounter I had on the bus once with this weird guy who Mr. Two Shirts, I called him. It was literally an encounter with a guy I was watching getting dressed for work on the bus. He put on a shirt, a tie. He's pulling stuff out of these bags. He puts on a tie. He puts on a waistcoat, and the thing you anticipate that's going to come next is the jacket, a suit jacket or blade. He reaches in, pulls out another shirt, and does it up to the top button. And when you go, I have questions.
Right.
But no one on the bus. Everyone's looking, going. I literally just told that story. Got some laughs, enjoyed it, and then they said just come back next week. So I went, go on then. 2.5 years later, I was still doing it, and then someone said to me, "There's a charity event that Ken Downing's doing," and I was like, "I love Judas Priest," and they said, "Well, there's going to be all these obscure, kind of 80s people there," and I've got a friend who was in the band. Do you remember Dexys Midnight Runners? They did Come On. Yeah, Come On.
Cut out for just a second. Oh, Midnight Runners.
Yeah, Dexys Midnight Runners. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
oh wow.
Yeah, so I actually know one of the guys from Dexys, and wonderful guy. And and there were all these people there. So I managed to get my way in there, and it was
Yeah.
But it was, I'll never forget meeting KK Downing, because he walked up to me, and it was a black tie affair as well. So I didn't have any of this. It was just like, tidy in a suit and stuff like that. And he comes up to me and he said, "Oh," he said, "You're the comedian, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I just want to thank you for doing this." And I was like, "It's my pleasure." And he went, "Free bar." That was it. We're gonna be friends, you and I. We were gonna be before this, but now confirmed.
Right.
And I just always enjoy doing something creative. I just always enjoy doing something like that. And it's where I'm comfortable. It's where I'm happy. And then obviously it just became organic. And again, my love of comics, my love of sci-fi, my love of nerd culture. Comic book company. It's got to be.
When it comes to comics, you've made some references. I'm just curious, what's your history like with comics? You mentioned you got into it about 7 or 8, you were saying?
I was at 8. So the first comic I ever read, I don't actually remember the issue, but what happened was my older brother basically wanted me to leave him alone. Grab the first available thing to hand that was either to hit me with or give me. And he just grabbed this Batman comic and he handed it to me and he went, "Shoo." So I just walked.
Got me a prize. Let's get out of here.
Done. I'll be back once I've read this and see what else you've got. So yeah, I did that, and read that, and obviously it was, you know, coming up to 1989 anyway, so Batman was coming out, and
Right.
fell in love with that and had all the toys and so on. But then as I got a bit older, it was financially where I was, it made more sense for me to buy certain Marvel comics because they were cheaper at the time. So
Right.
I was buying the Fantastic Fours because I could just get more. That was the concept in my head. They were just this
Because they were
guy
doing like the reprintings, right? They would bind a couple of them together, or
no, these were singles, but I think
oh, okay,
there was this guy had got this place, and it's all the, you know, the comic boxes and stuff. And I think he just was selling what he'd got in his loft, in his attic, kind of thing. Didn't matter to me. I was just like, I'm in. Here is all of my
right.
pocket. But he was selling the issues for like 50p for the Fantastic Four ones, you know, which,
Nice.
you know, so for £1 I could get two. So I'm like, right, you know, so I was getting more. And then as I got older, just obviously your taste change and things can get a bit darker. I fell in love with Hellboy. And then a friend of mine said to me, have you ever read The Authority? And I said, no, what's that? With just first comic I read, and within a day of reading that comic, I had ordered everything that I could find. I was honestly, addicted. I've written reviews on this that have gone on websites for the Authority, like the top 10 Authority characters. And
Nice.
I talk about it often. I've stated that, in my very humble opinion, you know, when people say, "Oh, best power couples in comics, Midnighter and Apollo," thank you very much.
Oh yeah, very much.
You know, just fabulous, and I love the Authority. Not so much when DC took them over.
Yeah.
I'm an original WildStorm fan. I want Midnighter in that black coat. I want Apollo with, you know, the kind of you know, Greek god hair out to here and looking cool. You know, I love Jack Hawksmoor. I think he's such a
Such a great
surreal
concept.
yeah, just surreal, but such a brilliant idea. You know, and the engineer, just in general, I think they're fantastic.
And the flawed doctor made it for me. This person who has access to all of this, you know, otherworldly knowledge, and yet at the same time cannot stop overdosing and constantly is really,
exactly.
you know, damaged so badly.
The most overpowered / flawed hero. But yeah, and I just think it was fantastic. And Jenny Sparks was just, you know, she just got this great attitude about her that I loved. And you know, but the storylines were brilliant. The transfer of power. Anyone watching the transfer of power storyline? I loved that so much. But yeah, and then I got into that, and then obviously as I got to meet more and more independent people, my indie, you know, stuff has grown. I a lot more indies now and things like that.
What did you think about the idea of making that leap from this thing that you loved reading to this thing that you're now creating? Was there any transition? Was there any awareness in your mind of like, I'm going to do this thing that I write a couple of comics, and the first entry I ever got into comics was writing for a couple of people where I had a friend who said, hey, if you could write comic scripts, there's a need for it. And it's like, well, my novel isn't, no one's buying my books. No one's buying my short stories. You know, I'm out there like everybody else pitching stuff. So I took a stab at a couple, and then I ended up I do this online series, Greedy Greg. It's just an online comic, and I really enjoy it. And gradually things started to sort of, but there were moments where I'm writing this and going, I'm doing this thing that I used to love. I still love reading. And I'm now trying to be one of those people who's doing it. And it was a very weird experience of like, I actually tried to explain to someone else later of like, is it okay that I'm doing this? Am I allowed to, do I need some sort of training? And, you know, does someone need to go, hey, you're okay, kid, go ahead. Like there was this sort of awkward moment of like, what if, no, but I think, you know, that uncertainty right as you're in the process of doing something. And for me, I think one of the parts was that I'd watched these people and I'd read so many great creators, you know, do that thing that made me feel like, wow, what a great experience. And now that responsibility was mine. I'm putting something out there that if it's good, it's that. And if it's not good, it's anything below that. And am I good enough to even try that? It was a very interesting challenge, and I think I still feel it every time I write. I think it's a translation from any other kind of writing I've ever done. But for me, it was very specific to comics. It's like, wait a minute, it's kind of like this person I've had a crush on, and I'm gonna tell him I have a crush. And from that point on, that's it. Like, your relationship is defined on what happens after that. Like, the moment you tell them, it's no longer Schrodinger's cat. You've definitely crossed the line, and it's now whatever transpires after. And I was just kind of curious about that, because it's also weird in that there's things I'm working on that I won't be able to talk to people about for like another year. And I'm sort of like, is it still real if I can't tell people what it is? Does it still exist if it hasn't been made? So I was just curious what your experience was like writing comics in that transition of someone who read them to someone who's now creating them, let alone your own comics universe.
Yeah, I think for me it was like because obviously the one thing I was always concerned about was the fine line between homage and plagiarism, and because so many ideas have already been done, so many things have already been out there, and there's so many. TV just went really lag. There's so many things. Just made me jump.
If it gets too loud, we'll just have to have you back on and redo the whole thing, and it'll be a laugh and whatever.
That's fine. Don't worry. It'll just cut, and you'll just cut it, and it'll be me in just different clothes. But yeah, but it's I that was always my concern. Is I want to create these characters. I know I want to tell stories. I have an urge to create and do this. But it's that fine line. Where's the line? And that was always my concern. And the thing is, again, it's as long as it's you're not creating a character called Arachna Lad, and Bat Dude. That's your plagiarism right there. But I think there's been so many things that have already been done that you're always going to have some form of homage in there, and you're going to be influenced by certain things. Like I said, with Foe, it was that idea of V for Vendetta, or for me growing up, I loved G.I. Joe, so Snake Eyes. That even though they did show his face in the end, which I was really mad about, in the comics, like, no, don't do that. But the idea that Foe is it remains to be facially unseen. So yes, there's going to be homage, but I think I'm pretty okay at just going for stuff sometimes. I'm okay to just dive in and just try it. I have a philosophy that if something doesn't work, and as long as you've not plagiarized, but if something doesn't work, don't worry, you just don't do it again. There's only one way you're going to know if it's going to work or not, because you can ask advice, but the only way that you're going to know is to just do it. ASAP is like, it's like a double meaning. It's like as soon as possible, but also like we just get it done. Let's just get it done. Let's get it out there and let's go for it. See what happens.
Right. I wonder, is that sort of also maybe a reflection of like the mentality kind of you have to have as an artist creator, as someone in comics, where it's like, hey, you can't actually dwell on the past a lot, or you will constantly find yourself never creating more, never moving forward, because you're always looking at, well, I could have, I should have. Great. Try it the next time, learn from, there's got to be this resiliency, I think, that comes with it. Much like I think a lot of writers and artists experience, where not everybody's going to love your stuff, or that thing you want to work in a certain way doesn't. Okay, well, you have two choices. You either try again or you don't, but you keep moving to some degree,
exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the name was like a happy accident in terms of that, because the reason that we're called ASAP, so that for the AVS live. So
didn't even make me ask the question. You're just telling it for me. I don't even have to go. Where?
No, that's fine. So it's actually I'm a father of 3, so I've got 2 daughters and a son, and my kids are Amber, Sophie, Alfie, and then my name's Paul, and then you pop me on the end. You've got it right there.
Can't argue with the strategy.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember my dad telling me that he never really gambled when I was growing up, but once or twice on like I think it was his honeymoon and one of their like trip he and my mom took before we were born, or right around the time we were like kids. He was like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "I got into Keno one night," and I'm like, "You don't gamble?" He's like, "Yeah." I had a bunch of numbers. So I used my social security, your social security, your sister's, your mom. I started winning. I just started playing around with your guys' identities. And then once I was done winning, I walked away. And I laughed at that idea. And I loved it. For me, this is like such an interesting parallel of like, I need a name for a company. I got 3 kids, A,
Yep.
S, A, and I'm P. Done.
Yep.
Draw
Literally
from what you
done.
know, right?
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's like as a creator, not to sound too sappy about it, but the greatest thing that they're the 3 greatest things I'll ever create. They're the 3 greatest stories that I will ever bring to life. So
it's the way to make sure, it's the way to sort of like see the future of, your story, to see the next generation of stories.
yeah,
You're now living and kind of seeing the world through their eyes and not just your own, right? Which I
yeah,
imagine has to be an
and
amazing
it's
thing.
both my daughters are adults now as well, so both my daughters are officially like actually grown. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a reality that sinks in sometimes. I have a couple of friends who they've got kids now that are in their 20s, and I'm sort of like, wow, I remember you, and now you're this person, this fully realized identity.
My eldest daughter, who's Sophie, she's 23 now, so she's an actual grown human. And then my other daughter, Amber, is 18. My son's 9. My son is still little.
Gotcha.
But again, it's they became, like I say, they became the catalyst for the idea of the name. But it just then became, like I say, became a mantra. Like when we did the book for me and Laurie, right? Let's stop messing around. Let's just say we're going to do this, and let's get there as soon as possible. And then what happened off the back of that is we launched a second platform. We actually have 3 platforms and a brand new thing as well. So I'll explain those as quickly as I can.
And I'll put
So
links and stuff in this show notes, and everybody can follow up on, there's no requirement to write this all down right now. He's just going to go over it. So people are like, wait, hold on. Do you hit pause? Hold on.
Yeah. When I started the company, it was just, the idea was just our world and just this main world of all these characters and these titles. And then what happened was, some people who I knew had been watching what I was doing and saw that I was, again, quite relentless and would just kind of do stuff and put it out there. And they were like, hey, we want to put, do you do other people's comics? Because we want to put our comics through. And I thought, well, I don't want to buy your comics off you, because we've got this whole world already. And then I ended up having a conversation with a great creator. Again, I will bring all of these people onto your podcast. You have access to all of these people.
I'm looking forward to it. And then I'm going to get all of you on, and we're going to do a crazy roundtable. And I don't know who's going to shut everybody up, but it's going to be nuts.
That'll be a big round table now. But so a creator called Lance Lusara, who's a friend of mine, who's a filmmaker. He owns a indie film company, but also had created a comic book series called Bob Non-Union Psychic. And nice. I know it's a great title.
Great
So what he wanted, he said to me, he said, Bob's been in the single comics we've done, but can you, if I bring it to you, can you make it into a graphic novel? Can we do, and it ended up being is called The Big Book of The Big Book of Bob Volume 1. So it's Bob Non-Union Psychic, The Big Book of Bob Volume 1, which is incredibly difficult to say with an overbite, but I do manage to get through it. And
it sounds like, when you think of the acronym, BBOB, sounds pretty nice.
Yeah.
Big Book of Bob.
Yeah, exactly. So we did that, and then what I did was create a whole new platform. So the new platform, well, I say new, it was new nearly 2 years ago now. I think we celebrated it a year, 2021. We celebrated it. And what we did is we launched this platform with another anthology. We decided to go prose again. And the platform's called the NE1 World. So it's NE1, the NE1 World. and we launched it with a book called Perspectives. And what we did was we put the call out there to writers this time, rather than me and Laurie do everything, because obviously once you spoke to Laurie and for myself, we're incredibly busy. Like both of us are doing so many things and we're running around and getting stuff done. And we're constantly, either on social media, on doing spreadsheets. I look at the budgets, all this kind of stuff. So we put the call out. We ended up with 16 writers. And what happened was we said, right, okay, it's all for free because it's all for charity. So 100% of the profits from the book, well, not the profits, the sales, beg your pardon, 100% of the sales went to, it's called the Dyspraxia Foundation. And my son has dyspraxia. And in a nutshell, I explain dyspraxia like this. Imagine if your radar's off. So you want to run straight that way, your body takes you that way. And you can have problems with coordination. It puts you on the spectrum as well, but you can have problems with coordination. My son has difficulty when it comes to writing coordination and so many, things, and it causes him a great deal of pain, and we have to do physio. My son is an absolute hero. Like he's had this, I think he was diagnosed at 5 and he's now 9. He barely complains. I mean, I'd be complaining. I complain when I walk up the stairs, it's like, So I said to everyone, look, if you're willing to do this for free, this is it. So again, 16 writers. So what I loved about what happened was we did 16 writers, a cover artist, an editor called Jess Mundy, and then obviously Laurie was kind of overseeing the majority of the editorial.
Right.
We turned that book around from the point of advertising we wanted to do it in just under 3 months to sale.
That's very impressive.
I was blown away by how quickly it was done. It was like, right, let's get it done. We want to launch it for the anniversary, which was in August. Go. And we did. And it's a beautiful book. And what I love is every writer in there, utmost respect for, and friends with a hell of a lot of them. But one of the things I really enjoyed was out of the 16, 8 of them, it was the first time they'd ever been published. And it was such an honor to be part of that. It really was. It was such a great honor to be part of that. So we launched the NE1 World with that book, and we did a big podcast on there, and we brought a representative on from the Dyspraxia Foundation to really explain it. We had like a rolling room of all these writers coming in and out. It was wonderful. Like it was really great.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, and the book's still on. It's still on the NE1 World website, and I think we've mainly put it to just digital now, so people can just digital download, and we just do that. So we launched with that, and then the next thing we did was the Bob book for Lance. Then I met Malcolm Wong from Tokyo, excuse me, and we did Dog Eater's graphic novel, and then it just spiraled, and then we had more and more creators coming on board. And what we do with the NE1 World is, number one, the intellectual properties are maintained by the creator. We don't touch your property at all. It's nothing to do with us. We will help you on your journey. We are more than happy to do so, but we're not stealing your stuff. Like that's not happening. Right. Two, it's one of those things where if you've got a completed thing like Lance and Malcolm did, then like let's say Lance wanted it into a graphic novel, we made that happen. With Malcolm, he'd got the majority of it, so we were just more, doing the distribution side of things and the digital, because we do the digital comics as well. And then we got people who come in and they were first timers. So we got Simmer, who's a 20-year-old lad, but we were able to give him some guidance, and we were like, we think this will help on your cover, we think this will do this. But we have actually got like a whole submissions page in there as well. We've just signed Paul Gomez up, and he's just come on with 2 books, Cryptic Haze and PTSD. Nem, who we mentioned earlier, we launched his book last year, which is the first novel through the NE1 World, The Long Game, and we've got in the next couple of months, we're actually expanding it. I think we're more than doubling the stock of creators
Wow.
in there. And yeah, it was just a platform where the need was there. So I thought, okay, let's just make it and then see what happens. And yeah, we launched it in 2021. So.
And you're still going. You've got, sounds like,
Mhm.
so many more, plans. If we wanted to maybe take a glimpse into the future, 3 to 6 months over the next year, like what's on the horizon? You've suggested that potentially things are coming, and now I imagine with the NE1 World, you're opening up to so many more people who are coming to you like, hey, I've got this thing, and you can turn around and see, okay, in a couple of months we can have this sort of done.
Yeah.
Anything you want to sort of tease for folks, like, hey, keep your eyes open, ears open,
Yeah.
remember this
There is.
name, anything along those lines?
So yeah, so first of all, we have a kids platform as well, which I created just for my son. So he wanted to be involved. He liked what Dad was doing, but obviously it's too mature. The content's too mature for him. So I was like,
Sure.
okay. So I created ASAP minis, and we've got some kids books, and we're doing some kids comics, and I'm writing a comic with a dyspraxic superhero.
Very
for,
cool.
for for that platform. And then we've got creators who are coming in. We're publishing one, I think, in the next 6 months, where we're just doing the editing on his book at the moment. But we're doing a book called The Ninja Professor for him. A guy called Paul
Nice.
Nolan from over here with me. But yeah, and it's a similar thing to NE1 World, but it's just for kids books and kids things and stuff like that. And then so we've got those three, and then just February 1st, we have just launched something else. So about 6 months ago, I had an idea. You know, when you have an idea pop in your head and you go, no, I'm too busy. Leave me idea.
Right.
But it wouldn't get out of my head. It wouldn't get out of my head. And the one day a name dropped into place, and you only go, oh no, I've named it. I have to see if I can do this now. I've named it.
Yep.
Like,
Once you give it a name, you got to take responsibility for it.
yeah. So honestly, it's so right. But what I did was I created it's a platform, it's a database, if you will, called GIG, which stands for Global Indie Group.
Okay.
So this isn't a comic book platform per se. This is a platform for creatives. So imagine, if you will, if you've come up with an idea. Okay, so you've just got a concept. This is my idea. Where do I go? So yes, you can run around social media and try and find like-minded people, and I've done it, and it's very time consuming. It's a bit full on. Sometimes you get people weigh in with opinions, and you can get caught up in things that take you completely off where you originally wanted to go.
Right.
So with that in mind, what I did was I created Gig, and it's a site where you sign up for a membership. And again, I've kept memberships low, so it's $6 a month, so it's $6 a month. But within Gig, there's writers, editors, artists, film and video, so filmmakers and videographers. There's training, crowdfunding. Did I say publishers, podcasts?
I don't think you had, but now you have, so you've got it.
Yeah. So essentially, if you have let's say you have a single idea. So you go in and you go, I have a single idea, but I'm not a writer. So you can contact one of the writers on the list. So you speak with the writers, and then you can go, oh, but I need it edited. So they write you a book. Let's say they write you a comic book script, and then I need it edited. So here's where the editors are. So I've now had it edited. Now I speak to the artists, and now I need to fund this. So then I speak to we partnered with Crowdfunder. So so now I speak to Crowdfunder. Now I need to publish it. Here's the publishers. Now I need to promote this. Then I can get some videos made for social media, and I've got a list of podcasts, which I fully intend to, once we're off here, to add you to that list.
Appreciate that. Very, very kind of you.
Yeah.
That sounds like an amazing community platform. It's an idea that I think is one that people are really going to find can serve them, because that's the biggest challenge. I'm working I'm working on one project right now where I had the idea, and it wasn't until I heard about a project and someone was like, yeah, and we have an artist, that I was like, okay, well, I've got this idea. And it was
Yeah.
almost like I couldn't make it real without that artist, because I've seen my art and it's tragic and it would not serve my story well. And I want people to, not get stuck on how bad the art is and enjoy this story. So that was just a luck and happenstance. Like, okay, there's an artist. It's almost like, great, I'm drowning and I'm going to grab onto you and I'm going to see if we can make this work. But instead, you're offering this idea of like, look, come with whatever you have, your idea, something written, something more, and meet this community who can say, okay, well, this is where you are. What would you like to do next? Let's introduce you to the people that can work with you on that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I would imagine there's sort of a breakdown of, how that works in regards to benefiting everyone. If you work with that group, then you're getting credit as maybe the creator of the idea, the writer's getting credit as the person who helps bring it to life in one form, the artist, everyone is sort of part of this community. They're all getting their own recognition. But at the same time, it's a process where someone can take an idea from beginning to end, and there's people at every stage of the process who can say, hey, if you put in the time and you work on it, you can get to the end and have your completed idea. And we've got the people and the tools to do it.
Exactly. It's everything you need under one roof. And the other thing that we've added to it as well. So if you are a creator, so if you are an artist or a writer, we've created, like I say, it's like a business account. But the difference between us and say other platforms, so if you think of certain platforms that you can get work off, there's a 4.5% to 5% slice off the top of all jobs.
Sure, they got to make their cut.
We don't take any. We don't take anything off the top at all. So it's the same thing. So the business account is $6 a month,
right?
But if you get a job that's, argument's sake, $500, and you agree that, done. It's $500.
It only costs you $6.
Yeah, exactly. But that's it. That's exactly it. It's $6 a month. And let's say, I know of certain artists that I work with, they're doing several jobs on several things at the same time. So let's say you get 2 or 3 jobs from gig. You can fund your life for the for whatever you need, and it's $6. That's it.
I'm going to include that link in the liner notes too, because I can imagine, plenty of people are going to be really interested in that. If I had heard about this idea before, I would have gone, yeah, let's go get in there. Who knows? Maybe I'll pop in and say hi, because it sounds like an amazing project, an amazing community. And I think one of the great things it offers is, if it's all right there, honestly, what do you have to lose? Basically, you're not going to reach that point where it's like, oh, we don't have one of those, we're going to wait until we get one and then you can keep moving. It's more like, it's all right there. How far, how fast, what's your ASAP, essentially, when it comes to this gig idea. And man, that's I like the future that you're building. When I'm thinking about the idea of like where someone can be looking in the direction, it's easy to think about, well, I'm making this and I'm doing this and I'm selling you this. But you're also offering this other thing, which is saying, yes, and along the way, how can we make it easier for everybody else who wants to do something similar, who feels like, there's threshold guardians and there's all these obstacles to getting from your idea to a finished project. You're saying, okay, what if we have all the people that get you past the obstacles, that help you solve the problems as they show up? And that's not something you always hear about someone suggesting when they're making successful progress, that they're like, hey, how can I bring others along with me? It's usually like, hey, how can we expand? Your thought is, yes, how can I expand, but how can I bring these people with me? How can I find a way that others are coming along? And I like that intention.
Thank you. No, I've been so fortunate. Like, I really have been so fortunate with how things have gone. And I've met some wonderful people, and like, I joke about my friendship with Laurie. I'm so thankful for it. My friendship with Nam. I brought Laurie and my friend George Medina in to help me with gig and and push towards the promotion. And they're both on gig as writers and so on and so forth. but I've been so fortunate to make the connections that I've made, and 2 years. It was August 2020 that I launched this, and if it hadn't have been for good people, if it hadn't have been for people that have got my back, and lifted me up, I've had moments where I've gone, and I've gotten to tear my hair out, and I'm trying to grow it back at the minute anyway. So, but if it hadn't have been for them, would I have thrown in the towel? Would I have gone off, for God's sake? So I'm grateful for them, and I think people like that need to be celebrated, and what better way to celebrate people who can help you by putting them in one place and saying, this is the place you need to find those people. This makes sense.
I completely agree. I can't think of a better place really for us to sort of like put a pin and say, wow, yeah, that's a great place to end with. As I mentioned, I'm going to include all the different links that you have in show notes so people can go through there and check. But maybe somebody listening is like, yeah. As soon as this recording ends, they're going to reach out and find you. If there's a place where they just wanted to go, hey man, just heard you on a great chat, I have things to say, and I'm going to go follow up on this, but they just want to reach out and say, hey, where's the most likely place people can make contact with you? Where's a platform you respond the most often? Or
any and all, because I've always got my phone on me, but we are ASAP Imagination on Twitter and Instagram, LinkedIn and TikTok. And then obviously there's the website, there's a chat in there anyway. So there's always ways to read, but 9 times out
you
of 10
can be found.
Yeah, but 9 times out of 10, if it's Twitter or Instagram, are probably be the ones I'm on the most, so I'm using the most. So
that's where they can get you ASAP. Well, I do my best, man. I'm here. I try. My whole goal is how can I help. So with that in mind, I've been lucky enough to be speaking today with Paul with Hades, and as I am known to do, this is the part where I stop the conversation for you. He and I are going to have a civil conversation where we're not being observed. I don't know, like lab rats or experiments or some other sort of thing that you view and sort of like and talk like civil human beings, and then move on with the rest of our day. But thank you for joining us, and
thanks for having
Hades. Man, thank you for an amazing conversation. It was absolutely my pleasure. I discovered so much more that Lori had hinted at, and now that I've discovered more, it's almost like you gave me the first hit for free, and now I'm addicted, and I'm okay with that because
thank you.
You know what I mean? I've got money and I've got stuff to sell, and I'm down. So I'm really excited for it, man. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right, let's end the recording and let's talk like human beings.